On the day my wife gave birth to the child of her terminally ill first love, my father-in-law and mother-in-law had 10 thugs stationed outside the delivery room. But even when the delivery was over, I never caused any trouble. My mother-in-law held my wife's hand and sighed. "Emma, don't worry. As long as we're here, we won't let him get anywhere near you. Your dad even brought people to guard the hospital entrance. If he dares to stop you from giving birth, we'll call the police." My wife, pale and weak, nodded slightly, but still instinctively glanced toward the elevator. What she saw was nothing but emptiness, and only then did she let out a sigh of relief. She couldn't understand it. All I wanted was to help her leave a legacy for her true love. Why couldn't I just understand her? Looking at the nurse holding the crying baby in her arms, she smiled contentedly. She thought that if I could visit her tomorrow, maybe she would forgive me for all our previous arguments. She might even allow me to become the child's father. But what she didn't know was that I had just submitted my report to the United Nations. 7 days later, I would give up my nationality, become a stateless doctor, and never return. The hallway outside the delivery room was unnervingly silent despite the presence of so many people. Nurses hurried back and forth. Doctors whispered amongst themselves. But no one looked in my direction. I stood there, watching through the small glass window as the scene inside unfolded. My wife, Emma, lay on the hospital bed, her face glistening with sweat, exhaustion weighing down her body. Yet, despite her frail state, she looked peaceful. Happy. She clutched the tiny newborn against her chest, her fingers tracing delicate circles along his back. A deep warmth filled the room, one I had not been invited into. Beside her, James stood close, his presence looming over both mother and child. He reached out, brushing a strand of damp hair from Emma's face, whispering something that made her laugh softly. The intimacy of the moment sent a cold realization through me. This wasn't my family. This was his family. I turned away from the glass, my fingers curling into fists. The weight of reality pressed against my chest, suffocating me. There had been a time when I believed that love could overcome anything. That no matter what hardships Emma and I faced, we would endure them together. How foolish I had been. A nurse passed by, pausing briefly when she noticed me. Her eyes held a flicker of pity before she quickly looked away and continued on. Even strangers could see it, how out of place I was. I exhaled slowly, reaching into my pocket for my phone. One new message. United Nations Office, your application to renounce citizenship has been received. Processing time, 7 days. 7 days. That was all that remained between me and my freedom. I slid my phone back into my pocket and turned toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Emma's voice, filled with joy, calling out the baby's name. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to know what she had chosen to name him. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing with a quiet chime. And with that, I left. I would never return. The house was filled with laughter. As I stepped out of my car, the sound spilled through the windows, warm and full of life. It was the kind of laughter that made a place feel like home. But not for me. I stood at the front door for a moment, gripping the handle, but not turning it. I had spent the entire day at the hospital, throwing myself into work, delaying the inevitable return to this place that I no longer recognized. Taking a slow breath, I pushed the door open. The living room was bright, filled with the glow of the chandelier overhead. A baby's soft cooing mixed with the sound of conversation. Emma sat on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, her hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She looked healthier than she had in weeks. Exhaustion still evident but softened by the joy in her eyes. She wasn't alone. James sat beside her, holding the baby in his arms. He bounced the child gently, rocking him with practiced ease. His movements were natural, too natural. Emma's parents were nearby, their faces glowing with pride. "Look at him," her mother gushed, reaching out to stroke the baby's cheek. So much like his father. She didn't mean me, James chuckled. He's got a strong grip, just like Ryan used to. My stomach twisted. I set my bag down by the door, clearing my throat slightly. The conversation continued as if I wasn't there. I walked toward the kitchen, passing by the dining table, where plates of food sat half-eaten. The scent of home-cooked meals filled the air. Except it wasn't a home I belonged to anymore. Emma's father poured James a glass of wine, smiling approvingly. "You've been a real blessing, James," he said. "Taking care of Emma, helping with the baby, I don't know what we would have done without you." I clenched my jaw. Once upon a time, those words would have been said about me. But now, James was the one they leaned on, the one they welcomed, the one they had chosen. "Lucas, you're home." Emma's voice finally addressed me, but there was no warmth in it. Just polite acknowledgement, the way one might greet a distant acquaintance. I looked at her, at the softness in her gaze as she watched James cradle the baby. "Long day at work?" she asked, offering a small smile, as if expecting me to sit down and join them. As if nothing had changed. I stared at her for a long moment, then at James, then at the baby in his arms. And suddenly, I knew. I had been replaced. I didn't belong here anymore. Without another word, I turned and headed upstairs, leaving them to their perfect little family. The house was quiet, too quiet. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of the baby monitor on Emma's nightstand. Soft breathing, tiny whimpers, signs of a new life that had nothing to do with me. Emma was curled up beside me, facing away, her breathing slow and steady. She had been asleep for hours, exhausted from taking care of their child. I should have been used to this silence by now. But I wasn't. I turned my head slightly, looking at her in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. This was the same woman I had once promised to spend my life with. The same woman who had laughed at my terrible jokes and held my hand when I was too tired to stand after a long shift at the hospital. And yet, she felt like a stranger now. When did everything change? Emma had always been firm about not wanting children. "I just don't think motherhood is for me," she had told me one evening, curled up on the couch, a glass of wine in hand. "I love our life the way it is. Just us, free to go wherever we want, do whatever we want. No crying babies, no sleepless nights." I had nodded in agreement, relieved. My job was demanding, my hours unpredictable. A child would have made things harder, complicated the careful balance we had built. But then Ryan came back into her life, her first love, the one she had never truly let go of. She didn't say it outright, but I saw the way she changed, how she started checking her phone more often, how she hesitated before answering my questions about where she had been. Then one night, she sat me down, her hands gripping mine so tightly I could barely feel my fingers. "Ryan doesn't have much time left," she had whispered, her voice trembling. He's dying, Lucas." I had already known. The whole town knew. Ryan had been diagnosed with a terminal illness months ago, but I had no idea what she was about to ask of me. "He wants to leave something behind," she continued, blinking back tears. "And I want to give him that chance." I had stared at her, uncomprehending. "What are you saying?" She took a shaky breath. "I want to have his child." Silence. My mind went blank. My ears rang. Surely I had misheard. "You want to what?" Her grip on my hands tightened. "Lucas, please, just listen. I know it sounds crazy, but I need to do this. Ryan has no one else and—" "Emma," I interrupted, my voice cold. "You never wanted kids," she flinched. "I know, but this is different. This is for him. Not for us. Never for us." I pulled my hands free, standing abruptly. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. "You're asking me to be okay with you carrying another man's child?" "It's not like that," she pleaded. "It's just, Ryan doesn't have much time. I don't want to regret this for the rest of my life. And what about me?" She never asked what I wanted. She never even considered it. I should have left then. I should have walked away before she had the chance to shatter the last pieces of our marriage. But I had stayed. Like a fool, I had let her make her choice. And now, as I lay in bed beside a woman who no longer saw me, listening to the soft breaths of a child who would never be mine, I realized the truth. I had lost her long before Ryan died. Our love had turned into something unrecognizable, and there was no way to fix it. At first, James made himself useful. He brought groceries, cooked meals, and helped clean up around the house. Whenever Emma was exhausted from caring for the baby, he was there to hold the child, whispering reassurances like it was the most natural thing in the world. And Emma let him. "It's just temporary," she told me one night as we lay in bed, though she hadn't touched me in weeks. "He's only here to help." But James never left. It started with small things. "Emma, I don't think you should feed him that," James said one morning, taking the baby bottle from her hands. "He'll sleep better if you use this formula instead." Emma hesitated but nodded, letting him make the decision. "Emma, you should rest. Let me handle the late-night feedings," he insisted another evening, gently pulling the baby from her arms. Emma sighed in relief. "Thank you, James. I don't know what I'd do without you." I stood in the doorway watching the scene unfold, my hands clenched into fists. She used to say those words to me. One night, I came home late from a shift at the hospital. As I stepped into the house, I noticed something strange. James's shoes were neatly placed by the entrance. I walked into the living room, where Emma was curled up on the couch, the baby asleep in her arms. She looked up at me with tired eyes. "Where's James?" I asked, already dreading the answer. She hesitated. "Upstairs, putting some things away." I felt my stomach drop. "Upstairs, in our bedroom?" Emma gave me a look as if I was being unreasonable. "He just needed somewhere to keep his stuff. He's been helping out so much, Lucas. I don't see the harm." I let out a bitter laugh. "Of course you don't. James wasn't just helping, he was taking over. And Emma was letting him." I confronted her the next night. "You're letting him control everything," I said, my voice low and sharp. Emma frowned. "That's not true. He's just trying to help." "Help?" I scoffed. "Emma, he's deciding what the baby eats when you sleep, where he stays in this house, and you just listen to him." She crossed her arms defensive. "James cares about us, Lucas. Unlike you, he's actually here." The words hit harder than I expected. I took a step back, staring at the woman I had once thought I knew. She was choosing James, whether she realized it or not, and soon there wouldn't be any space left for me. The decision wasn't sudden. It crept in slowly, through every cold glance, every conversation where I was ignored, every moment James stood where I used to be. It became clearer with each passing day. I was done. One evening, after another long shift at the hospital, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My resignation letter was already drafted. I hovered over the send button, hesitating for only a second before clicking it. A notification popped up. "Your resignation has been submitted." That was it. There was no turning back. The next morning, I went to the bank and withdrew my savings. Not everything, just enough to start over. I left the rest behind. Not because I was being generous, but because I wanted nothing from this life. I spent the next few days packing in silence. Emma barely noticed. She was too busy with James and the baby. I could have told her, could have confronted her one last time. But what was the point? She had already made her choice. The day I left, the house was filled with soft morning light. Emma sat on the couch, rocking the baby in her arms, humming a lullaby. James stood beside her, smiling down at them. They looked like a family. My suitcase was by the door. I stood there for a long moment, waiting. Maybe for a sign, maybe for a reason to stay. Emma finally looked up, her expression unreadable. "Are you going somewhere?" I let out a quiet laugh. She really didn't know. "I'm leaving," I said simply. She blinked as if trying to process the words. "Leaving?" "For good." For the first time in a long while, silence stretched between us. Then, to my utter disbelief, she just nodded. "Okay, That was it. No questions, no protests, no why, or please don't go, just okay. James stood nearby, arms crossed, his smirk barely hidden. He had won, and Emma didn't even realize what she had lost. I picked up my suitcase and walked out the door. I didn't look back. I would never look back. At first, Emma thought she had made the right choice. The house was quiet now, peaceful. There were no more cold stares, no lingering tension in the air, no more awkward silences when Lucas entered a room, no more guilt gnawing at her stomach when she saw the pain in his eyes. James had been right. Lucas had always been distant, detached. He had never truly understood her. This was what she needed, a fresh start, a new life. And for the first few weeks, everything felt normal. James was there, always willing to help. He took care of the baby, handled the grocery shopping, made sure Emma got enough rest. Whenever doubt crept into her mind, she pushed it away. Lucas had left. James had stayed. That had to mean something, didn't it? The first time she noticed something was off, it was small. She had been searching for her phone, checking under pillows and between couch cushions, when James appeared in the doorway. "You don't need it," he said simply. She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're always exhausted, Emma. You need to focus on yourself, on the baby. You don't need distractions." Her stomach twisted. "I was just going to call my mom," she said, forcing a small laugh. James's expression remained unreadable. "I already spoke to her this morning. She said you should rest." Emma hesitated, then nodded. Maybe he was right. He always seemed to be right. The next time, it was about money. She had logged into her bank account to transfer some funds, but the password had been changed. She tried again. Still wrong. "James," she called, walking into the kitchen. "Did you?" "Don't worry about it," he interrupted smoothly, pouring coffee into a mug. "I took care of the bills." She frowned. "But Emma?" His voice was gentle, but something about it made her pause. "You have enough on your plate. Let me handle things." She swallowed the protest rising in her throat. She wanted to argue, to say that it was her money, that she didn't need him to handle anything. But the baby cried just then, and James was already moving past her, already fixing everything. She let it go. Days passed, then weeks. Her world grew smaller. She stopped hearing from friends. James had a reason for each one. "She's too negative, Emma. You don't need that energy around you. She just wants gossip." "Is that really what you want right now?" One by one, the people in her life disappeared, until there was only James. The realization hit her late one night. She had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, exhaustion pressing down on her. James was in the next room, humming softly as he rocked the baby to sleep. She should have felt safe. Instead, she felt trapped. James controlled the money. James controlled the phone. James controlled her. And worst of all, she had let him. She had traded one prison for another. And this time, there was no way out. The sky stretched endlessly above him, a vast, open blue, untouched by the weight of the past. Lucas stood at the edge of the refugee camp, the dry earth beneath his feet cracking with each step. In the distance, makeshift tents fluttered in the wind, their fabric worn but sturdy. The air was thick with heat, the scent of dust and medicine clinging to his clothes. It had been 6 months since he left. 6 months since he walked out of that house, out of Emma's life, out of everything he once knew. And not once had he looked back. His days were long but fulfilling. The morning started before sunrise, checking on patients who had lined up outside the clinic overnight. Malaria cases, infected wounds, dehydration. The problems were endless, but so was the need for help. Lucas had thrown himself into the work, losing himself in the rhythm of saving lives. It was easier this way. No time to think, no time to feel. At night, when the world quieted, he sat outside his tent, staring at the unfamiliar constellations above. Sometimes his thoughts wandered back to his old life, to his old house, to his old wife. But only briefly. Emma had made her choice. She had James now. She had the family she wanted. And Lucas, he had this. A new purpose, a new beginning. That was enough. One evening, after a particularly grueling surgery, Lucas found himself in the doctor's tent, cleaning his instruments. His colleague, a French doctor named Pierre, leaned against the counter watching him. "You don't talk much about where you're from," Pierre said casually, sipping his tea. Lucas shrugged. "Not much to talk about." Pierre chuckled. "Everyone has something to talk about." Lucas didn't answer. There was nothing left for him in the past, nothing worth remembering, nothing worth missing. Back home, things had taken a terrifying turn, but Lucas didn't know that, not yet. And even if he did, he wasn't sure if he would care, because the man he used to be, the man who would have rushed back to fix things, was gone. For good. The first time James hit her, Emma didn't believe it had actually happened. It wasn't hard, not really, just a sharp slap across the face when she had questioned him about their finances. It was so fast, so unexpected, that for a moment she sat frozen, her skin stinging. James had looked at her with wide eyes, as if he was the one who had been hurt. "Emma?" he murmured, stepping forward, reaching for her. "I didn't mean to." She flinched away. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You just don't listen sometimes. You know how much stress I'm under, handling everything for you, for the baby. I need you to trust me." She had nodded numbly, whispering, "I do." Because what else could she say? After that, things changed. James no longer tried to mask his control over her. He embraced it. When she hesitated before following his orders, he grabbed her wrist, his grip bruising. When she tried to argue, he raised his voice, his words cutting her down until she had nothing left to say. And when she cried, he simply watched. "Stop acting like a victim," he snapped one evening as she wiped her tears. "I've given you everything. Do you think Lucas would have stayed? Do you think anyone else would have taken care of you like I have?" Emma said nothing, because deep down, she knew the answer. No one was coming for her. James started shaping the child into his own image before he could even walk. "He's going to grow up strong," he told her one afternoon, watching as the baby sat in his high chair. Not soft, not weak. Emma stared down at her son's innocent face, her heart aching. She wasn't sure what terrified her more, the man James had become or the man he wanted their child to be. The house that once felt like a home had become a prison. Her phone was gone. Her bank account was locked. Her family had stopped calling, stopped checking in. James was all she had left. And that was exactly how he wanted it. One night, after a particularly bad fight, Emma locked herself in the bathroom, gripping the edges of the sink, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Her cheek was red, her lips split. She stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman in the mirror. A shadow passed beneath the door. "James," his voice was calm. "I think it's time we talk about custody." Her blood ran cold. She pressed her hand against her stomach, trying to steady herself. "What?" James sighed. "I don't think you're fit to raise him anymore, Emma. You're too emotional, too unstable. I think it's best if I take full responsibility." "No." The word left her lips before she could stop it. James chuckled. "Do you really think you have a choice?" Tears burned her eyes. For the first time since Lucas left, real fear settled in her chest. James wasn't just trying to control her anymore. He was trying to erase her. And if she didn't do something soon, he would succeed. The knife felt heavier in her hands than she expected. Emma stood in the dim glow of the bedroom, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the nightstand. James lay sprawled across the bed, his back rising and falling with each slow breath. He looked peaceful, vulnerable, and for the first time in years, powerless. She tightened her grip on the knife. A small voice in her head whispered that she could still walk away, that she could take her son and run. But run where? James had taken everything from her, her freedom, her family, her identity, and soon he would take her child too. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the blade. One deep breath, one swift motion, the knife plunged into his chest. James's eyes snapped open, confusion flashing across his face before pain swallowed it whole. His mouth opened, maybe to scream, maybe to curse her, but no sound came out. Emma pulled the blade out and struck again, and again, and again. Blood gushed onto the sheets, pooling beneath his body, soaking into her hands, her nightgown, her skin. By the time she stopped, James was nothing more than a lifeless heap, his once commanding presence reduced to silence. For the first time in years, Emma could breathe. A soft sound made her freeze. She turned slowly, her pulse pounding in her ears. Her son stood in the doorway, his tiny hands gripping the frame, his wide eyes filled with terror. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, he screamed. The sound was high-pitched, raw, a wail of pure fear. Emma staggered back, the knife slipping from her fingers and clattering onto the floor. "No, no, baby, it's okay," she whispered, stepping toward him. "Mommy's here, you don't have to be afraid." But he only screamed louder, and suddenly Emma wasn't looking at her son anymore. She was looking at James, his eyes, his mouth, the way his face twisted in fear and judgment. He would grow up to be just like his father. Cold, controlling, cruel. And one day, he would take everything from her, just as James had. A shudder ran through her. No, she would not let that happen. Her hands found the knife again, her grip firm, her movements steady as she approached him. "Shh, baby," she cooed, her voice gentle. "It's okay. Mommy's gonna fix everything." The child sobbed, stumbling backward, but he wasn't fast enough. The blade slid into his tiny chest, piercing through soft flesh and fragile bone. His cries stopped. Emma cradled him as he fell, rocking him gently, humming a lullaby under her breath. For the first time since Lucas left, the house was quiet. Truly, beautifully quiet. The house was filled with flashing red and blue lights. The sirens had long since gone silent, but their echoes still rang in Emma's ears. She sat motionless on the living room floor, her nightgown soaked in blood, her hands sticky and trembling in her lap. The bodies had already been taken away. The baby's tiny form wrapped in a white sheet. James, lifeless and cold, his face barely recognizable beneath the wounds she had inflicted. She barely noticed the officers moving around her, their voices distant, distorted, as if coming from underwater. One of them crouched beside her. "Emma Carter?" She blinked slowly. "You're under arrest for the murder of James Holloway and—" The officer hesitated. "And your son." A deep silence followed. Emma did not speak. She did not move. She simply let them take her. The trial was swift. The media called her a monster, a madwoman, a mother who had done the unthinkable. The courtroom was packed with reporters, their cameras flashing, capturing every moment, every expression, though there were none. Emma remained silent through it all. She did not cry. She did not beg. She did not say a word in her own defense. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before reaching a verdict. Guilty. The judge's voice was steady, emotionless. "Emma Carter, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole." There was no reaction. She simply nodded, as if she had known this was coming all along. Maybe she had. Halfway across the world, Lucas sat in a small cafe, sipping his coffee as the evening breeze rolled in. It was a quiet night. The air was warm, filled with the scent of spices and distant laughter. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Mother convicted of double homicide. The tragic fall of Emma Carter. Lucas read the headline twice, his eyes scanning the article with detached curiosity. James was dead. The child, too. Emma was in prison. He should have felt something. Grief, anger, maybe even closure. But he felt nothing at all. Emma had made her choices, and now she was paying the price. He set his phone down, looking out at the horizon. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden hues over the rooftops of the foreign city he now called home. He took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. He knew one thing for certain: he would never return. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content.